Now I want to introduce you to a theologian called Jack Rogers. In 1973, theologian Jack Rogers published an article in which he surveyed the published studies of approximately 12 theologians which had appeared since Lynn White's article. They reflect the search for an appropriate theological model which adequately assesses the biblical data regarding the relationship of God, humans, and nature. In other words, Jack Rogers, a theologian, he read the Lynn White's article and he gathered many theologians to find out whether to agree or to reject. At last the theologians, they accepted it. They told, yes, there is a truth, what Lynn White wrote. So let us find an appropriate theological model. Because they found out they did not provide an appropriate theological model to the faithful so far. In other words, they did not teach the faithful how to relate with Mother Nature. Such a catechism we did not provide till that time. So now theologians told, let us make a catechesis. Let us make an appropriate theological model on which our faithful can be educated and taught how to relate with God, how to relate with humans, how to relate with the rest of creation. Using traditional theological categories, the survey establishes a biblical basis for ecological theology. So there are 8 points there on which Jack Rogers and his associates wanted to create an appropriate eco-theological model. So these are the categories. First, that is A. It's about God. God is immanent in His creation. He can involve Himself without destroying His own integrity or the freedom and integrity of man and nature. God cares for all the creatures of the earth. Wow. See the Matthew chapter 6:26. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. So God is feeding them. God is immanent in creation. He is living with us. He is not only God of creation, He is God in creation. That is the point. So God is not separated. God, human, creation, they are together one. Psalm 104, verse 21 to 31. You can read later on. Laudato Si, paragraph number 99, you can read it later on, in which Pope is telling that, see the words in bold font, no? But then unexpectedly the prologue goes on to say that this same word became flesh. That means God is living in creation. The word made flesh and dwelt among us. So where is God? We are looking somewhere in heaven and clouds. No. God, human, both of them in the environment. We are together. So you should read Laudato Si later on. I don't have time, so I'm just pushing fast. B is nature. The biblical view is congruent with the view of modern science that the world is an integrated system. Nature is not ruled by natural law, but is animated, ruled and sustained by the breath of God. That is Romans 1:20. So the Spirit of God is here. All right? Nature is not run by some scientific laws, but the breath of God, the Spirit of God, that is what it is running. Laudato Si 2:3:3, you read later on. The C is humanity. Any form of radical dualism between humanity and nature must be rejected. Humans are co-creatures with nature. However, humans do seem to have some unique relationship with God. Rogers suggests that humans ought to be caretakers within nature. So we need to play a role. That role comes with three characteristics: responsibility, faithfulness, accountability. These are the three role plays. These are the three characteristics or traits of the steward: responsibility, faithfulness, accountability. So Laudato Si, paragraph number 81, illustrates what humans should do in the natural world. You can read later on. D, covenant. This biblical concept clearly expresses relationship between God, humans, nature. The Noahic covenant is an example of a covenant which involves God, nature, humans. You remember that? When God made a covenant, He not only invited human beings, He told also animals and plants, the creation. They were three equal partners. One is God, another one is human, and another one is whole of creation. All the three together. That is the beautiful story we read in the book of Genesis. Laudato Si 84 illustrates that concept. Then comes sin. Nature was subjected to the curse because of the fall of humanity. Human sin continues to wound nature. That is Genesis 3:17, Romans 8:20. You can read it later on because I have no time. Laudato Si, paragraph number 66, illustrates very clearly. Pope Francis is writing profoundly on the issue of sin, how sin came into our being. Then comes Jesus Christ. Christ created and holds together all things. That is John chapter 1, 3, 4, Colossians chapter 1, 17. The incarnation evidences the goodness of creation. So, the whole creation is going forward because of Christ. So Christ is the center, because we read in one of the following gospel, Christ is the firstborn of all creatures. Yeah? St. Paul writing to Philippians, he writes like that. Christ is the firstborn of all creatures. So I think Jesus is the energy, and He is the fuel which runs the whole cosmos. Laudato Si, paragraph number 83, illustrates that fact. And comes redemption. Christianity is not only otherworldly, for Scripture indicates the entire creation awaits redemption. That is Romans chapter 8, verse 19 to 23. And also see John 8, verse 16. Colossians chapter 1, 20. Laudato Si, paragraph number 243, illustrates the redemptive work of Jesus. The last one is eschatology. The end will inaugurate a time when all things will be renewed. Biblical descriptions of the eternal state seem to suggest a reconciliation between humanity, animal life, and plant life. Isaiah chapter 11, 6, 9, Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 25 to 27. See, the eschatology is nothing but, again, bringing in unity all those three factors which we found in the Garden of Eden. God, human, creation. And also in eschatology, that is what coming together of God, humans, and eschatology. So, even in Revelation, we read, that's the last book in the Bible. The first book talks about Garden of Eden, where everything is together. The last book is also talking the last chapter of the book of Revelation. The multitude of people are gathered in front of the Lamb. See? The multitude of people gathering. Nobody can count. In other words, the whole of creation is gathering there. So I hope you understood all this. This is a difficult subject actually. You need to read them again and again, and also the quotes what I have given you. Then only you will understand what theologian Jack Rogers and his associates are telling us. And also Pope Francis's Laudato Si quotes. I have given one quote for one discussion. There are 8 premises on which we are trying to build a theological model for ecological action. So that is what we are trying to do. We are joining with the theologian Jack Rogers and his associates. Then only we can give it to the people. So this is what we need to really see, judge, and act. So this is the Laudato Si. What is that? Paragraph number 100 on the last eschatology note. No, this is the quote. You can read afterwards. So to conclude, the brief overview in Jack Rogers' 1973 article indicates that ecological theology is possible. All right? It is possible. 3 elements seem to stand out, requiring our attention. All right? So this is what we are going to discuss next 2 days. This afternoon we are going to discuss about the first clause, a thorough understanding of the imminence of God in creation. This afternoon, the whole 45 minutes, we are going to discuss about how to find the God one who is present in front, back, left, right, above, down. One who surrounds you. God is not in heaven. He is here with us. He is Emmanuel. God made flesh and dwelt among us. So where is He? That is what we are going to establish. That is what we are going to find out. So that is the first discussion. Actually, these 3, I call them pillars of Eco Theology. These 3 pillars, if you learn them, you become an Eco Theologian. Eco Theology is a big word, confusing word, misleading word. But when you know these 3, oh my God, only these 3 things, that is what we call Eco Theology. This is a revelation to you. So this is what, first pillar is thoroughly understanding of the immanence of God in creation. Number 2 is the nature of humans in relation to the remainder of creation. So we should understand who you are, like René Descartes or many people. They want to understand, who am I? Ramana Maharishi in Tiruvannamalai, he was asking the same question, who am I? Who are you? Are you really human? Who told you you are human? I tell you, you are a snake. No, Father, I am not a snake, I am a human. How can you prove that you are a human? So that is what we are going to discuss. That's called Christian anthropology. So we should understand who we are and what we are capable of. Are we really image of God? Are we really humans as we call ourselves? Are we really intelligent? So lot of questions we need to answer when we discuss the second pillar. The third one is, after discussing those two, now you are clear. So, and the role of the church in ecology. Now you can play confidently your role as a steward, as an ecologist, or an eco theologian, or an environmentalist. So that is the third pillar. So you understood that now? So all those discussions today morning at last led to the outcome. So this is the outcome of these three pillars, which we call the pillars of eco theology. Thank you. We'll see this afternoon. This is the first pillar of eco theology, understanding of a God who is immanent in creation. You see, the understanding of God is very much biased. We are very much focused on the transcendental God, a God who is outside the universe. A transcendental God is in heaven. That is what we have been taught. He is out of creation, out of human reach. He is far away. So that is the God what we have been worshipping for the past 4,000 years. Yahweh or El Ruwa. All these gods are transcendental. In other words, we are biased. So what we are worshipping is only half truth. Only half truth. Yeah, transcendental God is not wrong. It is true. All our worship is focused on mass, prayer, adoration in a church. So we think we find God in a church, in sacraments, in masses. But other half of the truth we have not learned. A God who is present within you, within me, within each and every one of us. And also He is present in creation, every part of creation. So that is the thing we have neglected to teach and to understand and to contemplate. So that is what the future church's mission is all about. So of transcendental God, no problem. We have done very well. But how are you going to teach to the people a God who is present right here? So, God is present in the church. That doesn't mean God is not present outside the church. It doesn't mean that. Still, there is the possibility of the presence of God you can discern in other parts of the natural world. So wherever we are encountered with the divine. So it's a challenge. How are you going to understand? How are you going to make people understand that? So when you do that, then only it can be complete truth. But right now, we have only half of the truth about God. Other half is hidden. You understand me? So that is what our challenge is all about. So in Hinduism and in other parts of the Eastern religions, there are a lot of writings. It's about experience. It is not the bookish knowledge we are talking about. It is not the theory. It is not the theology, philosophy, where we conclude in favor of God. No, it is experience. We are left with only experience. Only few people have done it. Like Father Samarakon, Joseph Samarakon. He has seen the immanent God. There are seers, there are seekers, there are sages who experienced the God one who is present among us. That doesn't mean that you and I have seen it. No. I would say 98% of the priests and the clergy, they don't have a clue about it. So in the future, another 500 years, our attempt is going to be to unravel the mystery of the God of immanence. Here is Jürgen Moltmann, a German theologian. He has written a book, God in Creation, very important book. It was written in 1985, and mainly I am going to focus my presentation on his writings because he stands out and he is a brilliant theologian on this issue. But as I told you, in Indian context, a lot of other writers, they excel in this field of God of immanence. So that also we should be able to explore a little bit. I think as OMI priest, you should be aware of some of the Indian writings like Manika Vasagar. I think our Joseph Samarakon would have enlightened you many times on that, isn't it? Many times, yeah. So the brothers belonging to the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, they are well aware of our Indian philosophy and Indian school of thought, where this kind of discussion takes priority. You know that. So it is interesting that Ernst Haeckel, the German biologist who coined the term ecology, should have also addressed the relation of God and creation. In advocating a monistic philosophy in 1899, he wrote, "Pantheism teaches that God and the world are one. The idea of God is identical with that of nature or substance. Pantheism is the world system of the modern scientist." So this is quoted in Moltmann's book, God in Creation, which was written in 1985. So India is a philosophy which is known as pantheistic philosophy. What is pantheism? Pantheism views that everything is the manifestation of God. Monkey is the manifestation of God. It doesn't mean monkey is a God. Many people have misunderstood pantheism completely wrongly. It is not true that monkey is God. Monkey is the manifestation of God. Snake is not God. Snake is the manifestation of God. So everything in the natural world is the manifestation and the revelation of God. So that is what pantheism is all about. So today, our monotheistic religion should lean towards pantheism. Actually, monotheism, they denounced pantheism. That is wrong. That is no good. That is heresy. But now again we are leaning towards pantheism, where we view everything as the revelation of God. Because as I pointed out in my last discussion, God dwelt among us and He made His own flesh. Okay? God became, the Word became God and dwelt among us. So that means everything is the manifestation of God. Bhagavad-Gita, I want to give you one example where Arjuna asks Krishna, "O Lord, show your true form, reveal your true self. Please give me a vision. Lord Supreme, I desire to see your Ishvara form." That means the real form. And Krishna, the whole universe of the moving and unmoving, and whatever else you desire to see, all integral of my body, in chapter 11. So he reveals, he enlarges and he inflates his own body to match with the size of the universe. The whole universe fills the presence of the Krishna. See there? In other words, everything is the manifestation of God. In other place also, once Krishna is stole butter and he was eating. The mother came and opened the mouth. You know that story, no? The whole universe was rotating in his mouth. Then the mother understood. So these are the small little stories that tell you in Hinduism that God is present everywhere. And you are not going to look him only in the idol or look him in the temple or look him in a particular place. He is filled everywhere. So that is what the story of God, of immanence in Bhagavad-Gita. Tiruvasagam you know very well. Manikavasagar wrote it. I think Father Samarakon's favorite text, this is the one. In Tamil, people understand. In English also, Father Samarakon has translated so many times. Vanagi, Mannagi, Valiyagi, Voliyagi, Unagi, Uiragi. See? So in other words, the heavens, the clouds, the atmosphere is the revelation of God. Soil is the revelation of God. The wind is the revelation of God. Even the sound or the light is a revelation of God. My body is the revelation of God. Everything is filled with the Spirit of God. See there? Manikavasagar's poem, such a beautiful poem. You know Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit priest, a theologian, he put it so nicely. For those who know how to see, nothing is profane, everything is sacred. Yeah, that's a brilliant quote. Those who have eyes to see, everything is the presence of God. When I look at you, in other words, I should see the reflection of God. That means I don't have a clue to hate you at all. Nobody hates anybody. When you look at me, even though they look obnoxious to your eyes, it is still the manifestation of God. When a snake just stands in front of you, putting the hood, maybe even angrily, it's a manifestation of God. You don't have to kill it. He's going to manifest and he's going to turn around and he's going to go the other way. Everything in nature, everything. So that is how sages have seen. You should ask Father Chinnappa about Samarakon, how he interacted with the life forms here, especially with the snakes. So he will tell you, he was communing with the snakes like brothers and sisters. Even St. Francis of Assisi, he was communing with birds, wolves. He called them brother wolf, sister lamb. even sun, brother sun, sister moon, brother wind, sister water, brother fire, mother, sister earth. See? For him, everything is a relational inclusion. He included everything as a cosmic family. Thus, everybody became brothers and sisters because only one God, Father, Abba, He birthed them all. He is the Father, everybody is the children. That Father lives with us, children live with the Father in the same home called planet Earth or universe. So that is how Manikavasagar would see it. So the pantheism is a thought formulated by Eastern religions actually. You know, especially Hinduism, even Buddhism, even Taoism, Shintoism, all these religions, they formulated this kind of thought. This thought process originated in the East. All right? In contrast to this scientific religion of pantheism, Christianity in the last centuries has stressed the transcendence of God. In a standard text like Louis Berkhof's Systematic Theology, a balanced presentation of the transcendence and immanence of God is given. But transcendence is described first in forceful language. See, their Christianity deviated. I mean, it denounced the immanent God mindset, and it proposed transcendental God. So it's just the opposite. But actually, Christianity is now coming back to the original form now. So that is what the writings of Pope Francis illustrate in Laudato Si. In many places, I will read them for you, the whole text, and you will understand. So the Christianity and Eastern religions are closing in the form of Interfaith Dialogue. This is the Interfaith Dialogue Center where different thought processes come together in the form of a dialogue. I present my experience and you present your experience, and we discuss and we assimilate and we mix up and we blend in our own thoughts, and we formulate new rich assumptions, thoughts, and then we go forth and inseminate those rich thoughts to other people. So that is how it works. And Louis Berkhof, Systematic Theology, also talks about immanence of God, but the stress and the emphasis was on the transcendental God. Jürgen Moltmann, in his work God in Creation, has developed the first full-orbed ecological theology. One of his guiding ideas for an ecological doctrine is God's immanence in the world. He indicates that new ecological thinking about God must no longer center on the distinction between God and the world, but on the recognition of the presence of God in the world and the presence of the world in God. God in all in God. So actually, we need to recognize the presence of God in the world. At the same time, the presence of the world in God. So that is a brilliant writing from Jürgen Moltmann. Moltmann traces the emphasis on transcendental God in the Old Testament to the pantheistic animist environment in which Judaism developed. It was necessary and appropriate to distinguish belief in Yahweh from the idolatrous fertility and field gods of Canaanite culture. Cartesian methodology, however, took these distinctions into an entirely different context and used them to legitimate an anti-ecological, mechanistic worldview. See, Moltmann is very clear. Judaism came from pantheistic environment. Before Judaism, like Abraham, in the Ur of Canaan, he was worshipping the local gods, the pantheistic notion of God. So that is what the origin of Christianity is all about. So Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, we all come from Abraham. Abraham is the origin of all. So who was a pantheistic Lord? He was believing pantheistic gods. So again, what goes around comes around. So we are going to go back again to that notion where we don't call the natural world is a God, but we are going to call it differently, that it's a manifestation of God. There is a difference there. So that is what Moltmann is talking about. Moltmann argues that an appropriate understanding of the biblical doctrine of imminence is founded on a Trinitarian process of creation. Traditionally, theology stressed the role of the Father in creation in a way which resulted in a heightened sense of transcendence. Moltmann proposes that the full Trinitarian nature of creation be developed, especially the neglected role of the Spirit. He does this by focusing on the understanding of every created thing in terms of the energy infused continually by the Spirit. God is immanent in His creation by virtue of the presence of His Spirit. God's Spirit acts into and penetrates the world, affecting and fashioning the world's coherence without Himself becoming merged in it. Wow, that is a very difficult writing. He is a theologian, so he writes lofty ideas which are very hard to grasp, very hard to understand. Actually, this is only shaping up, but what you should know is very, very simple, that God can be traced out just right here, wherever you are. You can commune with God. So that is the point you should realize. So the Psalm number 104, that can illustrate what Moltmann was trying to tell you. He told the Spirit of God penetrates everything. So He is the cause. Everywhere you can find the Spirit of God. So you should bring Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You can't deny Holy Spirit. No, only Father created the world. No. All the three are involved. The Father created, Son preserved it, the Spirit nurturing, renewing. Like Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu. See? The Shiva is continuously dancing and destroying and recreating. So that is what the Spirit of God, the role of the Spirit of God is doing. So Spirit of God is all the time doing something. Right now I am talking to you. It is not me. It is the Spirit of God. I am interacting with you. You are not there. I am interacting with the Spirit of God. So it is an illusion. What you are seeing is not real. It's an illusion, like a Maya. There is no reality there. The reality is the Spirit of God. That is what doing everything. It's a beautiful psalm. Every day you should pray. This psalm, this quote, if you read, you will understand what Jürgen Moltmann was trying to tell you. All creatures look to you to give them their food at the proper time. When you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. When you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they die and return to the dust. When you send your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the ground. That tells you very clearly what Moltmann was trying to tell you in his book, God in Creation. That was very difficult to understand, but here, very simple. This is what he means when he wrote that quote. So you go back and read that quote again and you see. So here is Pope Francis writing about God of Imminence in Laudato Si, paragraph number 80. The Holy Spirit can be said to possess an infinite creativity proper to the divine mind, which knows how to loosen the knots of human affairs, including the most complex and inscrutable. God is intimately present to each being without impinging on the autonomy of his creature, and this gives rise to the rightful autonomy of earthly affairs. His divine presence, which ensures the subsistence and growth of each being, continues the work of creation. The Spirit of God has filled the universe with possibilities, and therefore, from the very heart of things, something new can always emerge. Nature is nothing other than a certain kind of art, namely God's heart, impressed upon things, whereby those things are moved to a determinate, and it has, if a shipbuilder were able to give timbers the wherewithal to move themselves to take the form of a ship. You see, that is so beautifully written. Holy Father is giving you an example. There are pieces of wood here, but they are given ability to come together and form and make a ship. But who is making them to form and become a ship? The Spirit of God. So that is the neglected force of God. That is what Moltmann is calling. So we are missing the Spirit of God. That's why we can't understand. But if you bring the Spirit of God, we can solve. It is like adding the missing element to the puzzle, and everything comes to light. So the Spirit of God is a beautiful concept we should develop. Actually, in other places, Moltmann would say, cosmos is the fabric that is woven by the Spirit of God. Beautiful. Cosmos is a fabric which is woven by the Spirit of God. So that is what the secret of the immanence of God is all about. There is tension in this understanding of God and creation, but it proceeds from an immanent tension of God himself. God created the world, and at the same time he entered into it. He calls it into existence, and at the same time manifests himself through it. The God who is transcendent in relation to the world and the God who is immanent in that world are one and the same God. So in God's creation of the world, we can perceive a self-differentiation and a self-identification on God's part. It's very simple writing. It's very beautiful. Pope Francis, in the paragraph number 238, writes brilliantly. It's a very simple English. Look at that. Pope Francis can write beautifully. Everybody can understand his English. So he is also saying the same thing what Moltmann is trying to say. The Father is the ultimate source of everything, the loving and self-communicating foundation of all that exists. The Son is reflection through whom all things were created, united himself to this earth when he was formed in the womb of Mary. The Spirit, infinite bond of love, is intimately present at the very heart of the universe, inspiring and bringing new pathways. The world was created by the three persons acting as a single divine principle. But each one of them performed this common work in accordance with his own personal property. Consequently, when we contemplate with wonder the universe in all its grandeur and beauty, we must praise the whole Trinity. Didn't I tell you that the act of creation is done by all the three? Don't think only Father has done it. No. The Son also involved, especially the Spirit plays a very important role. So when you discard Son and Spirit, you are lost. You are lost. Only you end up with only the transcendental God, that is Father. The immanent God is very clear and visible when you contemplate on Jesus and the Spirit. Only these two properties can enable you to see and peer into the immanent God. When you think only God the Father, you end up again transcendental God. Do you understand me? So the Son and the Spirit, they are very important when we try to understand what transcendental God is all about. Laudato Si, again, I want to read one more quote, 239. For Christians, believing in one God who is Trinitarian communion suggests that the Trinity has left its mark on all creation. St. Bonaventure went so far as to say that human beings, before sin, were able to see how each creature testifies that God is three. The reflection of the Trinity was there to be recognized in nature. When that book was opened to man and our eyes had not yet become darkened, the Franciscan saint teaches us that each creature bears in itself a specifically Trinitarian structure, so real that it could be readily contemplated if only the human gaze were not so partial, dark, and fragile. In this way, he points out to the challenge of trying to read reality in a Trinitarian key. Wow! That is St. Bonaventure, the disciple of St. Francis of Assisi, is writing. He is simply telling, when you see anything, a mosquito or a snake, you see three persons there: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That is how the original Adam and Eve could see. But after the sin, that kind of vision lost. When you see a snake, you see only a snake. But those three persons' reflection, your eyes and your mind unable to grasp because of the sin. So that is what. In other words, he is talking exactly like Manika Vasagar. Vanagi, Mannagi, Valiyagi, Valiyagi. Same. See, again, first they denounced, Christianity denounced, pantheism no, but now again they are retracing back. Again they are coming. It's a good time. I guess we are living in a wonderful time where East and West are mingling and also blending, and the whole human race is becoming one to understand the true nature of God, which is God of immanence. So I think the future looks beautiful, there is no doubt. Laudato Si 240, one more text I want to read. The divine persons are subsistent relations, and the world created according to the divine model is a web of relationships. Creatures tend towards God, and in turn it is proper to every living being to tend towards other things, so that throughout the universe we can find any number of constant and secretly interwoven relationships. This leads us not only to marvel at the manifold connections existing among creatures, but also to discover a key to our own fulfillment. The human person grows more, matures more, and is sanctified more to the extent that he or she enters into relationships, going out from themselves to live in communion with God, with others, and with all creatures. In this way, they make their own that Trinitarian dynamism which God imprinted in them when they were created. Everything is interconnected, and this invites us to develop a spirituality of the global solidarity which flows from the mystery of the Trinity. Wow, that is beautiful. Pope is using a lot of very intricate terms like Trinitarian dynamism, Trinitarian structure, Trinitarian key in previous paragraphs. So that all tells us that Trinity is acting in the universe all the time, especially the Spirit of God. This is profoundly ecological theology or eco theology. God's relationship to creation is not one of simple cause and effect. He relates in complex fashion with all the intricate lines of integration which are characteristic of God as Trinity. Creation has always been and continues to be a genuinely contingent order. This theology is also distinct from the pantheism of contemporary ecological thought. Hosborn notes that there is a tendency among Christian Greens to overemphasize divine immanence at the expense of transcendence. What is necessary is a doctrine of divine transcendence so radical that it necessitates belief in divine immanence. Moltmann refers to this as parentheism. You see, sometimes we end up in other extreme position. You see, I'm giving a talk on God of immanence. Some people like it. So they reject God of transcendence. That is a mistake. You shouldn't do that. When you talk about God of immanence, you are talking only half of the truth. I already told you. Don't reject God of transcendence. He is also true. He is God. He can maintain both the forms. You and me can't do it. We are mortals. We are humans. We can't do that. But God can do it. That's why He is God. He is transcendent, at the same time He is immanent. Only God can do that. So that is what we need. We need to balance. One foot you keep it on God of immanence, another foot you also keep it on God of transcendence. So what I am telling you is, already enough time has been given to you to understand and develop the God of transcendence. Already 4,000 years you have been trying to do. But now time has come to come and realize and to explore the other half of the truth, that is God of immanence. I think the future is open for that concept now. The next 500 years we are going to explore that. Tomorrow itself you can't teach because you don't know. You know only bits and pieces of some Hindu philosophy where you understand what God of Imminence is all about. That is not enough to convince wider audience in the world. The whole of Christian people you can't convince with Hindu thought. So what you need to develop is Christian thought. There are a lot of text in Psalms. As I quoted one example, that is Psalm number 104. It's a very good text. And also I quoted the word made flesh and dwelt among us. See, that is another quote I gave you. This kind of quotes, they are abound in Bible. You can dig them out, and only you need to develop. This is your challenge, the challenge of the youth. Our show is over. Only we can pass the mission to you. The next stage you need to develop. This is your task. So you need to use your own intellectual resources to make this notion possible for the sake of the future generations. So I think this is what I want to tell you, and this is what I prepared this presentation for you to share what is going on around the world. Especially Laudato Si is very clear, very clear. In many areas Pope is writing, especially chapter 2, the Gospel of Creation, towards the last part of the second chapter, which is titled The Gaze of Jesus. That is the subheading, The Gaze of Jesus, in which you have 5 or 6 paragraphs. They talk about God's presence and providence in the natural world.